Well, carnivals can generate billions of dollars for local economies. For a closer look at the financial impact, I'm joined by Toni Weiss. Toni is a senior professor of practice in the Department of Economics at New Orleans Tulane University. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome. Happy to be here.
So give us an idea. What do events like Mardi Gras and other carnivals bring to local economies?
They bring so much. I mean, you bring a lot of tourists into the city, but also the locals get, rally around the costumes, the food, the parading, the beads. It's an entire city is celebrating all together.
Now, in terms of impact, you have these annual events like carnivals and these festivals, but then on the other hand, you have these huge one-off or one in several year events like the Olympics or the World Cup. How do they compare to each other?
It's really hard to say because, especially in New Orleans, right, Mardi Gras is such an iconic festival, and so it defines New Orleans. Like when you measure an economic impact, what you want to do is compare what was being spent and the tax revenues that were being brought in when there wasn't this festival or when there wasn't this one-off event versus when there is. For something like Mardi Gras, you can't imagine New Orleans without Mardi Gras.
That's certainly true.
And it's also important to remember that Mardi Gras, at least in New Orleans, is a year-round event. I mean, the main bulk is, of course, Mardi Gras weekend and the week and a half leading up to it. But throughout the year, you see when tourists come to town, when conventions come to town, they put on little Mardi Gras parades. It just becomes such a part of the community. People come to New Orleans year-round, even if it's not Mardi Gras, but because of Mardi Gras and because of what they think Mardi Gras brings tourists to town all year round.
Now, it's interesting. You mentioned this idea of bringing tourists all year round, because sometimes when you have something like the Rio Carnival or Mardi Gras, it's a one-stop shop on your bucket list. What can some of these cities do to keep visitors coming back after they've already gone to these major events?
Well, I think it's important that when tourists come to town for Mardi Gras to be able to show them something else that there is to see, to be able to make some space in the city so that you can see, right now I'm here for Mardi Gras, but maybe next year I'll come in April or I'll come in May to do something else in the city. And of course, New Orleans, right, we have festivals all through the spring. We have Jazz Fest, we have, every weekend there is a festival. And so I think it's just important to be able to get that word out when we have people in town for Mardi Gras to see that New Orleans, while Mardi Gras is so huge, it's not everything, that we have a lot more to offer.
Now, unlike the Olympics or the World Cup, you don't have the same sort of huge infrastructure costs of building things like stadiums. So for a carnival or a major festival, where does the revenue tend to go? Does it trickle down basically to the locals?
It really does trickle down to the locals. I mean, there's huge amounts of tax revenues that come in, and of course those tax revenues, local tax revenues, help fund the city throughout. But you have the costume makers, you have the caterers, you have the float makers, which is a huge industry in New Orleans, and it's all very local. I mean, you have people, like one of the themes of a parade is shoes. So you have people who are decorating these shoes all year round in anticipation of Mardi Gras, and that's spending that they're doing all year.
Now, tourists bring obviously a lot of money, but they can also present some challenges when you have small communities and this huge influx of visitors. And there's also been a push in the tourism industry to have more mindful tourism from foreign visitors and engage them in, the local culture and the flavor, not just these one-off events. Why does that matter long term?
Well, because you want to show the tourists that your city is more than just that big, huge party, that you have a lot of other things to offer. You have other cultural events to offer. You have museums. You have natural beauty. You have other things to offer. And so it's important when you have this kind of captive audience to make sure that there's space within that schedule to allow them to see other things and to make the traffic accessible so that you can go and see other things around town.
Now, in terms of connecting people with these festivals, we saw that singer Rihanna became the ambassador for education and tourism for Barbados, and she's a regular there. You see her pictures and the carnival scenes plastered all over social media. What does having this avenue mean for promoting events, not just for the major carnivals, but also the smaller festivals on the circuit?
Yeah, it's You know, it's a matter of being able to show everything in their best light and to recognize that we have so much to offer. You know, in New Orleans, it's still, you know, there's no corporate sponsorship of New Orleans. It's all local. And the local spokesmen of Mardi Gras are the heads of the different crews that parade. And so it's making sure that they have that voice and being able to highlight what we have to offer.
All right, thank you, Professor Toni Weiss there from Tulane University's Department of Economics.